Welcome back to Man vs. Weed, the cannabis review podcast that touches grass so you don't have to. I'm your host, Tango Hotel Charlie. This will be our first trigger warning for the podcast. This podcast discusses an alleged sex crime. If you are sensitive to things of that nature, there will be a warning before it comes up, so that you can skip past any potentially sensitive material. On this week's episode, we're going to take a look at Powdered Donuts by Dykstra Greenhouses. Dykstra Greenhouses started as a landscaping business back in the 90s. Then they moved on to greenhouses, politics, and cannabis. This is a family organization run by three brothers, obviously the Dykstras. Their motto is, "From our family to yours." They say they strive for a superior product, something they're proud to put their name on. And they go on to say, with that in mind, they grow with the same quality and care they would for their own family, so that they feel comfortable giving it to your family. They're all about family. The word family shows up on their About page 9 times. It's not even called an About page. It's called Our Family. It lists two Dykstra brothers at the top, some other guy, and then the third Dykstra brother way down at the bottom. The first brother listed at the top of the page is Larry Dykstra. He's been working the family business for years. His entire professional life, apparently. He is the CEO and president as well as master grower for Dykstra Greenhouses, Dykstra Landscaping, and Dykstra Cannabis. On top of cannabis, they sell hemp, flowers, herbs, and plants. Larry also dipped his toe in politics, serving on Niagara City Council for 3 years. The next brother on the list is Randy Dykstra. He gets the title of vice president of the three family businesses, Dykstra Greenhouses, Landscaping, and Cannabis. In this family business, everyone gets 2 titles. No favoritism, boys. Everyone is equal. So Randy is also head of security at the Dykstra Brothers Cannabis facility. Randy has also worked at the family business his entire life. He seems to hold down the office work, contract negotiations, sales, that type of shit. The next guy they list is some guy from the Netherlands. His name is Bart Brewer. He's also the vice president at Dykstra Landscaping, Greenhouses, and Cannabis. His second title is great. It's responsible person in charge at the cannabis facility. This is an official position as dictated by the Cannabis Act, along with master grower, head of laboratories, quality assurance, and head of security. The responsible person in charge is the official point of contact with Health Canada and must have sufficient knowledge of the Cannabis Act and regulations. These titles are security clearance designations unique to the legal cannabis industry. Health Canada claims these titles are to prevent those with ties to organized crime or convictions for drug trafficking, corruption, or other violent crimes from infiltrating the legal cannabis market. This, of course, is bullshit, and most folks that sold weed were regular Canadians trying to put food on their tables. But also we know that it has nothing to do with preventing actual criminals from infiltrating the legal cannabis market. Speaking of which, that brings us to the third Dykstra brother, way down at the bottom of the Our Family page. Below the random guy from the Netherlands, it's almost as if they would rather you didn't notice. Like maybe you'll get bored at the Netherlands guy and go do something else. Nope, not me. I'm in it for the long haul. So way down at the bottom is the third brother, Rick Dykstra. Rick gets the position of director of the three family businesses. And since everyone else gets 2, his second title is assistant to the head of security. Lol. That's like when Michael Scott made Dwight Schrute assistant to the regional manager. Anyway, this guy has also been with the family business his whole life. His duties include government relations. According to the Our Family page, he also spent 2 decades working within the municipal, provincial, and federal levels of government. Wow. Shocker. Another politician given the keys to legalization. I'm sure those contracts from 2 decades of work didn't come into play at all. He also has an undergraduate degree and a master's in project management. Those are quite the credentials, more so than any other brother. Yet no CEO or even a vice president title, just a director and assistant to the head of security. But what could he have done to have such bona fides and yet be so low on the poll? He started his career in politics in 1991. Where he served on St. Catharines City Council for 6 years. One of the things he's known for is attempting to have a book banned from the public library. That book was about the sex crimes committed by Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. The pair were former residents of his home in St. Catharines, and he claimed to be attempting to protect the interests of their victims. He was unsuccessful, and they voted to keep the book. From there, he moved on to provincial politics from 1998 to 2002. Where he was criticized for excess spending on things like fancy dinners. Next, he moved on to federal politics when he was elected as a Conservative Party MP in 2006. In 2007, he helped introduce bills that would keep people in jail for longer with no hope of getting out early, or getting extra credit for time served in custody prior to sentencing. In 2008, he was appointed by the Prime Minister as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. Parliamentary secretaries are charged with coordinating policy. In 2010, he was charged with breaching the Conflict of Interest Act. The Commission found that, quote, Mr. Dykstra personally solicited funds from individuals with whom he had official dealings with shortly before and after a fundraising event. Now, we have already discussed how slippery these conflict of interest rules are for politicians and how easy it is for them to get away with it. So once again, Randy got off on a technicality. The commissioner noted in his decision that the act was a lesser standard than before Prime Minister Harper came into power, implying that the act had been softened on Harper's watch. The commissioner then issued a warning to Rick Dykstra to exercise caution in the future when making his shady deals that would have a significant impact on those he was soliciting donations from. So basically, he was holding policy ransom in exchange for donations. As a conservative, he is anti-abortion and voted against pro-life legislation, while at the same time voting against measures that would protect pregnant women from forced abortions. Then in 2015, while campaigning for re-election, Rick was partying at a bar in St. Catharines. That same night, a group of 16 to 18-year-old kids bribed a doorman to let them in. Once inside, they were partying with Rick Dykstra. They started tweeting about the bottle service he was buying them. Rick and his people asked them not to tweet about it, but they're 16 and 17-year-old kids, so of course they fucking tweeted about it. They were bragging about getting Ciroc bottle service, and bragging about all the expensive bottles of Ciroc vodka, along with pictures of them hanging out with Rick and his campaign staff, with the hashtag #VoteDykstra, and even tagged him in it. 2 days later, Rick's buddy and supporter, as well as the regional sales manager for Ciroc Vodka's distributor, Brandon Curry, contacted one of the 16-year-olds on Twitter. He offered her free VIP service at the club for life starting when she became of age. All she had to do was take down the tweets and deny that Rick bought the teens booze. She agreed to the deal and took them down. However, when they interviewed her about it for BuzzFeed a year later, she spilled all of it, along with screenshots for receipts. She said she didn't care about the bribe deal because she had no interest in drinking in the club. When they asked Rick about buying the girls drinks, he denied all of it and acted like he expected people in the bar to be of age. I don't know why that would matter if, as you say, you didn't buy them any drinks. Furthermore, I live with a going-on 16 teenager, and it couldn't be more obvious that she's not of age. He knew. When BuzzFeed contacted the Ciroc rep, Brendan Curry, about the bribe, he denied the whole thing. When he saw the screenshots of him offering her the bribe, he said he was just kidding. Now where have I heard that before? Then in 2016, Rick's good friend and Conservative Party leader, Patrick Brown, negotiated a deal to get the only other candidate for the position to drop out. Since that only left Rick Dykstra, he became the new president of the Conservative Party of Ontario. That lasted 2 years until 2018 when Patrick Brown had to resign, when several women came forward with stories of him sexually harassing them. Shortly after that, another woman came forward to Maclean's magazine to tell her story. This time it wasn't Patrick Brown, though. It was Rick Dykstra. It is here that I want to warn you again of sexual violence-related triggers. If this is traumatic to you, I will advise you to skip ahead. I'll put the timestamps in the show notes. So back in 2014, this young staffer was out for dinner and drinks along with Rick Dykstra and other Conservative Party colleagues. They were having a traditional work-related party. At the end of the evening, inebriated, they all started to make their way home. When the cab pulled up, Rick Dykstra jumped in ahead of her and gave the driver his address instead. When they arrived, he was very pushy and coerced her upstairs into his home, both of them well aware of the power dynamics between them. Despite her repeated polite refusals, he managed to get her upstairs, then forced himself on her, pushing her up against the wall and kissing her. She felt powerless and overpowered. He led her into his bedroom. He sat her down on the bed, stripped to his underwear, and tried kissing her again. She told him no again, and at this point, the victim said she tried to get up and leave. She says he then cornered her between the bed and the wall. Then he pushed her down onto the floor and forced her to perform oral sex on him. When he was done, he went to the bathroom, and she grabbed her stuff and ran. Like many victims, she was afraid to report the crime to the police. She confided in a friend who convinced her to write it down. She did, and eventually that same friend convinced her to report it to the police. She provided them her written statement, did on-camera interviews, and the police launched an investigation. But she was afraid of how people might treat her. She didn't want to get blackballed from her career, so she decided at the time to not press charges, like many victims of sexual assault in the workplace. To make matters worse, in those days there were no sexual harassment policies, so there were no guidelines for these situations. So despite her warranted fears, this young staffer bravely tried to keep working in the same building as her attacker, Rick Dykstra. She had to interact with him daily. He would make comments about her appearance, knowing what he did. She put up with it until the stress became crippling. She became depressed and got on antidepressants and sleeping pills. She brought it up to her boss, and they did nothing about it. Multiple friends who she had confided in at the workplace confirmed with McLean's in the article that she was extremely upset by the situation and fearful. The victim contacted the party whip's office about it. The party whip's job is to ensure that the party discipline adheres to the party platform rather than their own interests. The victim informed the party whip chief of staff about what had happened and asked them to make a record of it. However, when she decided to lawyer up and press charges, the party whip had no record of the incident. However, when asked about it, campaign officials told McLean's that there should have been a record of it, since they, along with the Prime Minister, debated whether or not to even appoint Rick to the position, given their knowledge of the incident. Unsurprisingly, this debate at a party meeting was split along gendered lines. They of course decided against the women in the room, and Rick got the job. Officials said allegations this serious should have been investigated. The victim said they only cared about protecting their reputation. Hours after this article was published in Maclean's, Rick resigned from the presidency of the Conservative Party of Ontario. In his letter of resignation that he posted on Twitter, he conveniently left out any mention of the attack. Eventually he went on to work with world-class shipbag Chuck Grafisi and the Wheaton Group, before settling for assistant to the head of security at the bottom of the page at Dykstra Greenhouses. Remember when I said those security clearances from Health Canada were supposed to keep violent criminals out of legal cannabis? Well, I guess that doesn't count for ex-politician sex predators. The Conservatives hired a lawyer to investigate how they handled the allegations. That lawyer determined that the party failed to make necessary inquiries about the allegations and blamed a lack of protocols. In 2019, as a direct result of Rick Dykstra's actions, the Conservatives implemented a code of conduct and harassment policy aimed specifically at candidates, and new protocols for handling these types of incidents. That would include more thorough police record checks, candidate vetting procedures, and training their teams across the country not to be rapists. Yikes. So today's sample is called Wreck and Leisure, or Powdered Donuts, by Dykstra Cannabis. Why make up their own name and not just call it Powdered Donuts? Especially when they went to the trouble of writing both on the package? No idea. It comes in a small Ziploc envelope and is dated July 19th, 2021, making it just 2 months old since package date. According to the label, it is 25% THC and its terpenes are listed as carfilene, myrcene, and limonene. That's pepper, beer, and lemons. It was $26 for 3.5 grams, which works out to $7.43 a gram or $208 an ounce plus tax. The nose and bag sniff test is a complete fail. There's the weakest smell in the bag, kind of hard to describe really. Definitely not weed. Descriptors I came up with were crackers or tea. There's something about it that's foody and not weedy. But whatever it is faint. Bag appeal is a fucking joke. Sad, pale, green budlets. Pea buds for the most part. Not even popcorn. It weighed in at 3.5 grams. Under the microscope, there are many decapitated trichome stalks, ambers, clears, and gooey green globules. I also noticed a couple of suspect fuzzy white patches, as well as several black microfibers and one white one. Yikes. Buds right up to the nose and only the faintest of smell. Nothing you can put a finger on. Despite being packaged 2 months ago, it is dry as fuck. After crumbling it into dust with my fingers, I realized why it's called Powdered Donuts. So fucking dry. Breaking it up doesn't help with the nose either, and it remains as dull and lifeless as ever. This makes it difficult to roll. It burns harsh and makes me cough. It gets you right in the throat. The flavor matches the smell, non-existent and bitter. It burns with a light gray ash with a yellowish tinge. The effect is a medium-range head and body stone. Nothing crazy. For over 200 an ounce plus tax though, you would expect to be impressed. Unless you're impressed by failing in nearly every category, then you might like it. So, would I support over-dried bud crumbles with non-cannabis materials, no terps, and damaged trichomes from an alleged sex-offending ex-politician? Sorry, Dykstra Greenhouses. On this podcast, you're fucking cancelled. Thanks again for listening to another episode of Man vs. Weed. As always, if you'd like to support the podcast, like, subscribe, and review on Apple Podcasts. Find me on Twitter at StreetVillain, and if you have any questions or comments, they can be sent to manvsweedthc@gmail.com. Until next time, enjoy your Croptober and free the weed.